was in what is called the Golan Heights, which is the northeastern part of Galilee. The next day we got on a ferry boat and we went to, from Tiberias, we went across the Sea of Galilee to Capernaum. And it was a very short ride. It was about maybe 10 minutes. And Capernaum is a fairly good-sized modern city, but they have preserved the ruins too that they have there. They found on the shore, sunk in the mud, this fishing boat from thousands of years ago, and they carbon dated it. And when they carbon dated it, it came to like 30 AD or something like that, time of Jesus. Literally, Jesus could have been in that boat, literally. And they preserved it in a museum. There's not much left, but it is, you can see the way that it's put together with wooden pegs, not nails. It's really interesting.
They had a sign, Jesus slept here.
The story, yeah. These are the ruins of the city of, the ancient city, biblical city of Capernaum. And you can see in the foreground one of the main walls of a house. Behind it would have been a room, and then there's another wall, and then you see these pylons sticking up. The pylons sticking up are made out of stone, and they support the second story. In the wintertime, the people live on one side of the pylons in that first story, and the animals live on the other. And they share the food and the warmth. In the summer, the people move up to the second floor where it's cooler, but the animals are still down. Very primitive and very small by our standards. I would say maybe 600 square feet, something like that as a house. So, and this is the remains of the synagogue in Capernaum. This would have been where Jesus preached the first time, and the man that had the demon recognized him and said, "What do you have to do with me, Jesus of Nazareth?" Remember that? That part of the inner courtyard wall is still standing. It just, it just sort of takes your breath away to know that he was actually there. This is a small church that was built on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, right there at Capernaum, or near it, but it's on the beach. The beach is not sandy, it's pebbles, dark pebbles. And we had a really nice morning there. We had devotions under that little tree there in the shade one morning. This is to commemorate the site where Jesus, they're fine, to commemorate the site where Jesus was standing on the shore when the boat with Peter in it approached after Jesus' resurrection, and Peter jumped out of the boat without putting on his clothes. Do you remember that? And Jesus told them to put down the nets, and they got this miraculous catch of fish, and then Jesus cooked breakfast for them right there on the shore. That's where that church is. And this church is maybe a quarter of a mile behind that one. It is up on a grassy knoll just outside the city of Capernaum, and this commemorates the spot where Jesus fed the 5,000. Yeah. And it's in the middle of a very grassy, rocky slope that goes up a hill. the sermon, and they call it the sermon, Matthew does, the Sermon on the Mount. It's not really a mount, but it's close. From there we went to Nazareth. And in Nazareth, they built a mock biblical village, just like the one that Jesus would have lived in growing up. Although I'm sure much cleaner, you know, and I don't know, much more catering to tourists, I guess. But there, I'm petting this little teeny tiny donkey that was the new little son of the working donkey that tread the seeds of grain out of the wheat. The mama donkey did that for hours every day, and the baby just played. And this, they had a replica of a carpenter shop. And you can see he's working with just the most primitive of tools, shaving down pieces of wood to make into hay lifting forks or rakes. There's no metal involved whatsoever. Everything is made out of wood with pegs. They just didn't have access to it. And everything done by hand. And here's the one of the women's looms. They actually raised the sheep, carded the sheep, dyed the wool, spun it, and wove it into materials. This is an olive press. It's a big stone vat. That's all it is. You fill it with the olives, and then the pole that you see has like a counterbalance weight on it. So when there's an enormous round stone that is attached to it, and they let the stone down on top of the olives, and it presses them, and the oil runs out of a channel in the bottom, and they gather it in jugs. It's really just very, very simple, but effective. And this is a tomb, just like the tomb that any of the Israelite people or Hebrew people would have been laid in after their death. Of course, this is in Nazareth. It's not in outside of Jerusalem. But they wanted you to be able to see that this was what everyone was used to. And they would put 5 or 6 people in there. And then every so often, after they figure that the remains have disappeared and there's nothing left but bones, they will go in and they will collect the bones, and they put them in these small stone chests that are called ossuaries. You ever heard of an ossuary? It's literally a carved out of stone, and it's a little chest, like a treasure chest, with a stone lid, and they stack all the bones in there, seal it up, and then just stack these things on top to make room for more bodies inside the tombs. Okay. Finally, we made it to Jerusalem. And it is a big, big modern city, but you can still see some of the old parts mixed in. We stayed inside the old Jerusalem walls. And in the old city where we were, the streets are all paved with stone, and they're not very wide, but on both sides there are little shops all up and down, and they hang their wares up above so that you can see very clearly what they're selling.
And the city is divided in different sectors. The sector where we stay was the Christian sector. So the owners, all the shops in there and the hotel where we stay was all owned by Christian, Jerusalem Christians, basically. So that's why you notice, if you look at the top, you see the stalls in there with the cross.
Yeah. Those winding cobbled streets were like a maze, and they went everywhere. I mean, it probably just covered like maybe a square mile or two inside the city, but you could get lost in there forever. Because with all this, the buildings sort of above you and the things hanging, it was dark. You could hardly see. This is one example of the Via Dolorosa that we followed when we were winding the old streets. The Via Dolorosa is Utah.
No, it's just the different stops.
Stations
of the cross. So you got 14 stops, basically. And
they're all marked like that in Jerusalem. So
it's up at it's the ends of the church of where's the last stop? It's the church of the Nativity.
Yeah.
So you could walk where the path that
Yes.
Jesus.
Did you have
Exactly.
guides?
Yes.
Did you have guides taking you?
Yes, we did. We had guides, and also the professors had all been there before. Oh, thank goodness. This is the Wailing Wall. Those big blocks that you see there that make up part of the wall are the foundation blocks for the Temple Mount, which is up above it. And I was telling Sean earlier, up on top of the Temple Mount now is not the Temple of Jerusalem. There's nothing to be seen of it anymore. But there is a huge mosque up there that the Muslims have built, and they claim that as their holy site now. So the Jews
Right on
revere
top of
this
the
Wailing Wall. Huh?
Right on top of the
On
Wailing
top
Wall.
of the Wailing Wall, and it's big. It's like an enormous plaza up there where the temple would have stood, just as flat as it could be. And this is what's left of it. But they gather there every day. The Orthodox Jews gather there every day to pray. This is just one small example of what we saw everywhere. Young teenage soldiers with semi-automatic rifles guarding everything. Street corners, buses. They were there at the Wailing Wall because there was a demonstration going on and they didn't want any trouble. We went outside the city over to where the Garden of Gethsemane is and looked out over what's called the Kidron Valley, and you can see the ancient city there in front of you. See where the dome is? That's the top of the Temple Mount now, where that mosque is.
Not the gold one, the blue one at the far end.
It's not in the picture. Anyway.
The gold one that you see there is an Orthodox church.
The Kidron Valley, I know it's hard to see, but all of these little things that are right down at the bottom of the picture and they go across the middle of the picture underneath that wall, they're all tombs. And that's what they look like. They're everywhere, all around the wall, the outside of the wall around Jerusalem. They're tombs. It's like a giant graveyard. This is the Garden of Gethsemane. We had time to spend there and have a worship service and have communion on Sunday. It was really beautiful. Those are all old, 1,000-year-old olive trees. They're just beautiful. We traveled outside of Jerusalem, and we went to Bethlehem. It's 6 miles, but you might as well go into another world, because you have to go from the Israeli section into Palestine, into the West Bank. You have to cross through a checkpoint and cross through that wall right there. That wall is 18 feet high, and it has another 10 feet of barbed wire on the top to keep the Palestinians out of the Israeli territory. And this is just one of the drawings that I saw on the wall of what the Palestinian people actually think of the Israelis and their wall. They didn't like it very much. Here we are in Bethlehem at the Church of the Nativity, which is also, and you can see the comparison with the St. George of the Dragon Church. This is Greek Orthodox as well. Much more ornate, but Greek Orthodox. And this is actually, I still haven't figured it out, but that's supposed to be, it's marbleized and all this stuff. That's supposed to be the manger where Jesus was laid when he was a baby. It doesn't much look like it to me, but hey, you know, once the church gets hold of something, it blitzes it up. That's it. We went to the Israeli National Museum, and outside somebody has built a little replica of the old biblical city of Jerusalem there with the temple. And there it is. It was about this high. It was just fascinating. I loved it. You could walk all around it. And here we are up on the top of the Temple Mount, under the dome of the rock. And I think there's a picture of the mosque. Isn't there? Right there. That's the Al-Aqsa Mosque, that famous Muslim mosque that you hear about so often, that is up on there where the temple used to be. It's not very shiny or new, certainly not like some of the domed ones that we've seen in Turkey and other places, but there it is. Okay. The last thing we saw in Jerusalem was the place of the skull, Golgotha, which traditionally is where Jesus was crucified. I don't know if it was below that or above it on the hillside, but nearby is a beautiful little garden where archaeologists have found a tomb, and the tomb is marked with a crusader cross, because some crusader believed that was Jesus' tomb. He got that information in the 5th or 6th century and marked it. And it could be. It could be. We just don't know for sure. But it's nice to think so anyway. Here we are. We flew from Tel Aviv over to Greece. And this is what we saw when we arrived. The most beautiful water, the most beautiful hills, the most beautiful vegetation, and it was cooler. There was no sand, no desert, no dirt, no guns, no, you know, I just said, I have entered heaven. This is a canal that was dug across an isthmus that separates Corinth from the mainland, the city of Corinth, the one that's in the Bible. Paul would have walked straight across there, but now you have to go across a bridge. And the reason is because it is a big isthmus like Florida. So instead of having to make the ships go Oh, this is Corinth, yeah. The ruins of the ancient Roman city of Corinth, where Paul was. And he would have seen this. This is a pre-Roman fortification, a castle that was built by the early Greek people, like the Mycenaeans or somebody, up on the hill above Corinth, which was down near the water. Beautiful castle, and that's what it looks like from up where that castle is. Just gorgeous. And that's the Adriatic Sea down there. Here we went to a small museum and just saw some beautiful pottery. And I started to quote the Ode to a Grecian Urn and got smacked.
Really?
This was a Mycenaean tomb that we visited before the height of the Greek Empire, before the Romans, before anyone. And it's called a beehive tomb, and you can see in a minute. It's underneath, and you see the grassy hump on the top up there. That's the top of the tomb, and you'll see the inside of it in a minute. That they have built it into the shape of a beehive. And that's what makes that grassy knoll on the outside. It's really a fascinating place. And they had worship services in there, sort of like the Druids did in England. It was a healing place. Here's another example of a Crusader castle. You know, they built fortifications everywhere that they went, everywhere in the Byzantine Empire that they were trying to take back from the Turks, from the Muslims. And this one is in the middle of Greece. It's a castle on top of a hill, and we stayed in the town underneath it. This is the little town where we stayed, Naphtalion. Today, the windy streets of the Greek town with their motorbikes and everything. This is the view from the hotel where we stayed. I want to go back. And this is the little town of Naphtalion. And there we are, looking out over the bay there. Just having a good old time. This is from the top of the Acropolis in Athens, where the Parthenon is. Very rocky up there. And you see they're trying to restore that famous building to the goddess Diana. Is it? Athena? One of them. Okay. One of the things I loved doing was eating al fresco out on the streets. The restaurants were just so much fun, and there were, you could go in a 2-block square, and you could see 20 of these. You know, the Greeks just love to eat out in the evening, and they don't eat out until about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. I don't know how they then can go to bed, but here we are, our group is having lunch one day. This is just another example of some of the streets in the old section of Athens, paved by the Romans. They paved everything in sight. And one of the hurdy-gurdy men selling souvenirs up near the Parthenon. Isn't that clever? I wished he'd had a monkey, but he didn't. And here we are in front of yet another ruin. Right before, this is the night before we headed home. And we were getting ready to go see the sunset and go out to dinner on our last night. And saw as the sun went down. It was fabulous. The whole trip was just fabulous. So